Hello everyone, and welcome to One Abstract Human. This is my first YouTube channel, so hello. I wanted to express what my journey to being diagnosed formally as an autistic adult was like. And here we go. So my son was diagnosed, and at that time I didn't know what autism was. So I researched as much as I could find for days and weeks and months to better be able to help him, because I knew that bringing him up in the way that I had known before might not necessarily fit him the best that it needed to fit him. So I didn't want to hurt his ability to learn things. So I did as much research as I could to help him along the road. And eventually I began seeing myself in that research. So I joined groups on Facebook, and through people's descriptions in their own lives I began seeing myself. Which was odd because these were complete strangers and I wasn't expecting that, but I guess it wasn't too surprising, but surprising enough because, I'd never talked to him before. So I remember at some point somebody had posted a quiz. I believe it was called the Aspie Quiz. And the questions were a little odd. They weren't what I was expecting, but I think that they were useful because it got my brain to think about things in a different way. And eventually, going on through my regular life, I began having things red flagged from the past and from the present that suddenly gave me answers that I hadn't had before. And they would always happen just randomly. I'd be doing just anything. It wouldn't really matter specifically what it was, but I guess it was just because my brain realized that I was listening, and it was bringing up things, a bunch of things, and it's like, oh hey, you remember this thing that happened? Oh hey, well maybe this has answers now. Maybe you should think about this. And so the more that it happened, the more that I realized that the big I don't know box that I had shoved in my head in the corner that was collecting dust and collecting things, and from, as far back as I can remember, they all started to have answers. And they all had the same answers. And at times I did question, just because it seemed a little bit too easy, whether or not that really was the right thing for me. But the more research that I did, the more that I realized that there really wasn't any wiggle room, that was exactly what had been going on with me my whole life, all along. And suddenly it wasn't so bad to feel so weird and so different from everybody else. I mean, there are still tons of difficulties, and in another video I'll bring up just how hard it is to communicate, because that is my current issue. And I would assume it's the same for a lot of other people, but at least my individual issues anyway. But so I did all of that, and I realized that I'd been masking, and I didn't even know that I had. I kind of let that fall because, I didn't really have a choice. I felt like I needed answers, and if I left that up, I wasn't going to get them. It was just going to be moving along in the world the same as it always had, and I didn't have answers then, so why would I keep doing it? So I let that fall, but it was difficult because suddenly I found myself nervous by things that, or about things that I hadn't been nervous about before, that I had been able to deal with, but I didn't realize that it was causing me stress, which would have come out in a different way, obviously, because, there's probably a bottle that would have, started overflowing or exploded or whatever, because you can only do so much with stress when you're bottling it up. So I probably just wouldn't have known what it came from, and now I do. But it doesn't make it any easier. because you're dealing with stuff that you don't know how to deal with yet. So anyway, I decided it was the best bet for me. So it took a while. It took a lot of months. It took a lot of researching to find who could diagnose an adult, or diagnose specifically a female, because it's its own issue in and of itself. Obviously, if you've researched that, that's something that you will come to know, or probably have already come to know. That there's a lot of misinformation out there, and so there's a lot of people that don't really believe or realize that females can have autism as well, or be autistic as well. So anyway, that's a whole different thing. But so when I went, it was really challenging because I had to be able to communicate. Big issue there, and it's in and of itself. I had to be able to communicate things in a way that other people could understand, which is not necessarily my forte, but 100% of the time, enough at least for somebody to see that there is difficulty, but then in such a way that to see that there's difficulty. So I don't know, I mean, maybe I made it harder than it was, which is what, a lot of people always told me continually in my life. But, I mean, I think that's a trait to begin with, because I'm just very detail oriented. So I survive on details. I have to, details everywhere. But anyway, so it was very challenging. It was hard. It was intimidating. And she would ask me questions of things that I thought were obvious, and, I would have to answer them anyway, because, my perception of it and other people's perception of things are not always the same thing, and I've come to realize that. But in the end, I did have the phone call and eventually the letter of formal diagnosis. But it's definitely a long and challenging and scary road, but I would recommend it for anybody that feels like they need the validation, or they feel like they'll just keep arguing with themselves unless they get it. But if you can't, or you don't want to, I mean, that's up to you, because not all people feel like that, and that's fine. I think the best thing about the community, the autistic community, is that they're pretty accepting of whether or not people get formally diagnosed. It doesn't matter, as long as you feel like it makes sense to you, and you're not a jerk to everybody else. People are pretty well fine with it. So anyway, good luck, and thank you for watching.